Hi guys, and welcome back if you were there for the first upload earlier tonight. This is the final video for the second section of the RTS tutorial. We'll be finishing up setting up our HUD functionality by setting up our game speed controls and the related progress bar. I am going to say I might be a bit delayed uploading the resources section 3, as I'm a couple of days behind recording even this section, and I want to make assets that we can use instead of using rudimentary or primitive shapes to represent our resources. So I'm going to be working on a couple of tree objects and a couple of rock objects that we can, or assets, sorry, that we can use to set up our resource system. I will likely upload a video prior to that with regards to at least a summary on this section and setting up what we'll need for the resources. That said, fire your editor back up and let's finish out this section of the tutorial. So welcome back to setting up our functionality in the HUD. So we're going to set up the last two bits. So in the last video, we set up our date and our time and the function for our military versus civilian time, or 12-hour clock versus 24-hour clock. Now we're going to set up our progress bar and these three buttons. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my widget. So I'm also going to close out the player controller. I'm going to open up my widget, and I'm going to select the game bar. And next to the percentage, or percent, I'm going to hit bind, create new binding. And while I'm looking at this, I'm going to quickly clean up a mistake from last time. I'm going to move this special, set spacer special to my clock category. Clear that out. And I'm going to rename this one as my set, or actually, I'm going to name it set speed display. I'm just going to drag this out slightly to have a little bit more room. And inside of this function, I'm going to create a new variable. Or not in the function, I'm going to create a new variable for this function and another function we're going to make. And I'm going to name it speed setting. Going to add a 2 on that because the capital letter did not stick. And there we go, get rid of that 2 so that camel casing is there. And this will be an integer. Going to drag this out, get my speed setting. I'm going to convert it to a float by dragging off and typing float. And then off of this float, I am going to divide it. So float divided by float. And I'm going to divide it by 5. And the reason I'm dividing by 5 is because the total number of game speeds I'll have is 5, really. So I'm going to drag this up here and plug it into return value. That's all we need to do for this one. So compile and save, and we can close this out. I'm going to close out all the extras as well. So I just have that event graph open. And I'm going to change the category by creating a new one to game speed. Okay, I'm going to compile and save again. I'm going to go back to the designer. And here I'm just going to grab the button. And I'm going to find the on-clicked in events, and I'm going to click it. I'm not going to do anything with it yet. I'm going to go back to the graph. I'm going to do the same for the pause button and same for the increase speed button. Oops, sorry, that's not the graph. There we go. So now I have 3 new events here. I'm just going to move this down here for now, and we're going to start with the pause button. And what I'm going to do in the pause button is going to be a little bit weird. First, we want to check, is the game paused? So to do so, I'm going to create a new bool variable, which I'll call isPaused. And I'm going to make this, as I said, a boolean. It's going to go into my bool category because I put all my booleans there. And I'm going to drag it here. Oops, sorry. I'm going to drag it out here. I'm going to get. I'm going to drag off that, type in branch, and plug that into the on pause. Now, we're going to do the false first. So the game isn't paused. What happens when you press that button? Well, I want to be able to pause the game, and I want to be able to, when I click the pause button, return to the speed it was at before. So I need to do a couple of things. I'm going to drag off that false, and I'm going to type in seek for sequence. Once I find it, I'm going to put it in there. And then I'm going to create a new variable. And I'm going to name this variable current speed setting. And I'm going to, again, make this a type of integer. And I am going to compile and save. Now, I skipped a step, unfortunately. Sorry about that. Go back to your speed setting and set the default value to 3. The reason why, now I'll get into why this is going to be 3 in a second, but for now, just set it there. I promise by the end of this video, it'll be clear on why that is. And I am going to worry about, one, getting the speed first, or sorry, storing my current speed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag my current speed, and I'm going to attach it to that then 0 pin. And I'm just going to add another reroute in so it's a little bit neater looking. And I'm going to take my speed setting, and I'm going to plug it into the current speed setting here. So what happens is when you hit the pause button, the first thing it's going to do, it's going to get your current speed setting, which is the speed setting itself, and store it in this variable called current speed setting. We're going to do nothing else off of this branch of the sequence. I then need it to pause the game. So I'm going to drag out speed setting again and attach it to this pin. So we're setting it again, but this time we're going to set it to 0. Now, before we go any further, there is something we need to do. We need to create a enum. So I'm just going to compile and save for a second. I'm going to go back to my map, or to my project. Going to go into my enums, and this would have been easier if I had my second content window open, so I'm just going to put that in. So second content browser is there now. And I'm going to create a new enum. So I'm going to go to blueprints, enumeration, and I'm going to name this one game speed settings enum. And inside of this one, oops, sorry about that. Inside of this enum, I'm going to create a total of 6 enums. So the final number you should see is 5. And I'm just going to rename these 0, 1 to 5 pretty much. And these will represent our game speed settings. Where 0 is pause, so I'm just going to put pause for the description, and 3 is our default speed. So we have 2 below it and 2 above it in terms of game speed. This is why we set our speed setting to 3. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to my HUD, and the next thing I need to do is actually create a function that all 3 of these will use. So I'm going to go to functions, create a new function, and I'm going to name this one set game speed. And inside of set game speed, I am going to add a new input, and I'm going to name this one speed multiplier, which for some reason I forgot to do in my test file. I'm not entirely sure why. And I'm going to change it from Boolean, so I'm going to click that, and it's going to open this up, and I'm going to type in game speed, and I'm going to find my enum. So now we have that enum there. I'm going to drag off of it, and I'm going to type in break. Oh, sorry. I'm going to type in switch, not break. And I want switch on game speed setting enum. I'm going to expand that out a tiny bit. And I'm going to create a new local variable. And this local variable will be speed multiplier local. And I'm just going to set one off the 3 pin here. And what I'm going to set it to here is 1. The reason I am setting this to 1, sorry, this also should not be an integer, it should be a type float. And I'm just going to delete that and put it back in. And like I said, I'm going to put this as 1. The reason I'm putting this as 1, it's going to multiply 1 times as a speed multiplier. So to show you what I mean, I'm just going to finish this out. I'm going to drag off of here, and I'm going to type in update game speed. Now, I don't want either of these, and unfortunately, unlike last time, the message isn't automatically showing up. And it's doing that because we don't have references in here to what we're actually calling. So I'm going to click context sensitivity, so it's turned off, and I'm going to click message. So update game speed message. Now, to show you why I'm setting this to 1, I'm just going to double click here. You don't need to, just watch if you want. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong one actually. That takes me to the interface. From the interface, this is passed into our game state. It's passed into our game state in our event graph down here. So the speed multiplier comes in. It is multiplied by our default game speed. And, well, I guess as I'm explaining it, I have to show you there's a bug here. This isn't right. So what we're going to do is we're going to change game time. We're going to right click it, and we're going to replace variable game time with game speed. So this comes in as a value of 1, multiplies it, so we say it at the default speed, and then we get our new game speed, which will be the default game speed, because 1 times whatever this is will keep this value passed through here. So when we update it, what we're doing is we're passing that multiplier to here, which changes the speed here. Remember, we set our default speed up here. And our default speed sets our overall speed. So I'm going to compile and save that real quick. I'm going to go back into my HUD. And I'm just going to Control W that. I'll plug it into the 0. I'm going to set this to 0 so we have our pause. I'm going to add a reroute node in about there and plug that in there. And I'm going to just repeat this. I'm going to move that up there so I have a little bit more room. And I'm going to plug this one into 1. Again, into that reroute node there. And I'm going to repeat this for each one of these options I have. In fact, I'm going to do 2 at once. That way I can just finish this out quite quickly. There we go. Oop. Of course, it would help if I didn't drag the entire set around like that. Now, the values that you might want to put in here, outside of the 1 and the 0, might change with time. You might decide you want to go faster or slower. The smaller the number, so smaller than 1, the faster this will go. The larger than 1, the slower it will go. So I'm going to set my speeds up and down in increments of 0.5. So this one will become 1.5. This one will become 2. This one then will be 0.5. Oops, sorry, that's 0.5. And this will be... Actually, well, that would make it go really fast. So I'm actually going to change these to increments of 0.25. So this will be 0.175, 0.125, 0.25, and I'll make this 1.5. Again, you can put whatever numbers you want in here. I'm just picking random numbers as I do this. My target is going to be my game state. So I'm going to just create a new category for these so they're not in the way anymore. And I'm going to name this one as game speed. I'm going to move the other float into there. Or sorry, other integer into there. And the new variable I'm going to create is a reference. Except for I'm not going to cast this reference like I normally would. And I'm going to show you why towards the end of the video. So the new variable, the new reference I'm going to make is to my game state. So I'm going to name it game state ref. And I'm going to search in my variable type for my game state, which is RTS game state BP. And I'm going to move it into my references. The reason why this is the variable I need is, remember, when we do this, our target is this event in our game state. So I'm just going to drag that into my target, plug it in there, And for my speed multiplier, I'm going to take my local speed multiplier and plug it into there. So I'm going to compile and save that. So now it will update the game speed, and I'm going to move this into my my game speed function category. Compile and save again. Close this window. And now that we're back in our event graph, we can finish out the pause button. So to finish out the pause button, what we need to do is we need to drag the game speed onto our event graph, and we need to hook up our set speed at 0 for the pause to the set game speed. I'm just going to drag that a little bit further out, and I'm going to drag off of this return value here, and I am going to convert it to a float. Make sure you have context sensitive back on, so to float from integer. Oops, sorry, that's not right. I don't want it to float. I meant to byte. We want it to byte. So to byte from integer. From the byte, we want to convert this to our enum value. So I'm going to search for my speed setting. So byte to game speed setting enum. And I'm going to simply just plug that into my speed multiplier down here. Just move this over a little bit. And I'm going to take my bool is pause, and I'm going to set it after game speed. So once they click the pause button, it gets the current speed and saves it in, or gets the speed the game is currently at and saves it in current speed setting. It then sets the game speed setting to 0. It passes that to the game state, and it sets our bool to paused. So let's just move this down here. And now we think about what comes off this true value. So what's going to come off this true value is the returning to this initial speed that we paused at. So again, what I want to do, I'm going to take this and pretty much reverse it. Oh, excuse me. So I'm going to go into my game speeds. I'm going to grab my game speed, speed setting, and I'm going to plug it into the true. Sorry about that. I hit the volume control on my headset. And the value that's going to go in here is my current speed setting, which is what we saved down here. Going to add another reroute in just so it looks a little bit prettier, just like we had down there. And we're going to repeat this process, except for, again, we're going to reverse it pretty much. I'm just going to highlight this to byte, byte to enum, my game speed setting, and my is paused. We're going to copy and paste it, or Control W it if you prefer, up here. I'm going to plug that in. And I'm going to hook up my output there to the convert to byte. And I'm going to set my pause to false. I'm going to compile and save. Let's just test this out. So here we are. Nothing happens, but it does change my game speed setting, you notice. It doesn't actually pause anything yet. So we know the button works. Or at least it works partially. I'm just going to grab all of this, and I'm going to move it here. The next thing I'm going to do is, it doesn't matter which one of these you start with, the code is exactly the same, except you change one node. So I'm going to start with my increase, just because that's what's on top in my inside of my test file. First thing I'm going to do is I am going to grab this branch with the is paused, and I'm just going to bring it down here by pasting it and plug it in there. So if the game is paused and we hit the increase speed button, what we want to do is we want the game to unpause off this true branch. So remember, is pause true, we hit the increase speed, we want it to increase its speed again. And I want it to automatically go back to the speed it was at before. So I'm just actually going to copy this part over and paste it in. I could have just copied that entire branch over in the order I did it in originally. The reason I'm not doing that is we're actually going to use this last node for the false as well. That's why I put the is paused here at the start instead. So off of this, what I want to do, off this false, is I'm going to type in plus. And I want to do an increment, and, do I want float or integer? Well, it's going to be based off of my speed setting, which is an integer. Now, I had grabbed float, by the way, which is why I deleted that. I meant to grab integer. Going to plug that into there. And what this does is every time we hit the button for increasing speed, it simply just adds a value of 1 here. Now, we want this value to stop at 5. So what we need to do is we drag off of here and type in clamp. So we want to clamp the integer. The minimum is 0. It doesn't really matter since this is only adding. But our maximum is 5. Our new game speed setting is what comes out of here. So we're going to drag our game speed setting onto that pin, and just make sure to clamp it. So it takes the value, it clamps it, and it plugs it into, and it inputs it into our speed setting. From our speed setting, what's going to happen, I'm just going to add a rewrote node into here so it's a little bit prettier looking, is it's going to then be passed into our set game speed. So if I compile and save now and hit play, well, if I hit this button, it won't change the speed of the clock just yet. It's going to change this bar, hopefully. There we go. We can see it increase, and we can see it's full. If I hit pause, we see it's emptied, but nothing happens. If I hit increase, it's full again. If I hit decrease, nothing happens yet. So for our decrease, what we're going to do is we're literally going to copy everything here. We're going to paste it down here. Ooh. I didn't copy all of it. I didn't copy at all. Sorry about that. So Control C for copy, or Control W if you just want to do it the quick way. I'm just going to drag this down here, plug that into my branch, and I'm going to delete this, plus node here. I'm going to type in, I'm going to type in minus, and I want decimate integer. So this will subtract 1 each time. Again, going to have the same min and max, and I'm going to plug that into my value, and I'm going to plug that into game speed setting. So now if I hit compile and save, and then play, if I hit the down button, we now lose the bar in the graph. If I hit up, it goes up. If I hit pause, it vanishes. If I hit down, it will reappear. So it has internal functionality, but it doesn't change our game time. And the reason for that is we haven't actually passed any of our references through. We haven't cast them, we haven't passed them, so it doesn't know what to do with this information. That's our next little bit we have to do. So in our references, we need to create a reference to our game controller. So I'm just going to create a new variable, and I'm going to type in, not game controller, player controller. I'm going to type in player controller ref. Excuse me, sorry about that. And I'm going to search in the variable type for my player controller, which is RTS player controller BP. And I'm going to move this to the reference category. And again, we aren't casting like we normally would. Apparently the name didn't stick, so I'm just going to try that again as player controller ref. There we go. Compile and save. We are done in the HUD. Don't hit play. It's not going to do anything yet. We haven't actually told it what to do with this. Actually, sorry, we're not done in our HUD yet. We have one more thing we need to do here. We need to make this exposed on spawn and public, and same for our game state ref. And we're going to compile and save now. Still, we're not done. We need to go into our game state. Sorry, not our game state. We need to go into our player controller. So let's go to our player and our blueprints, our player controller, and, well, fortunately it's already opening up the thing I want, but if it hasn't, if you're in your main graph, click on the spawn widget, or go into your macros for on play, if you have it in the same order I do, and open your spawn widget, and we have a slight problem. This hasn't updated correctly. Let's compile and save. Nothing's changed there. So if it hasn't changed, right-click the node and find refresh node, and you'll see we have game state and player controller. Now, I'm just going to make my life a little bit easier in terms of making it pretty, I'm going to go back into the HUD for a second, and I want to grab my game state and move it so it's above my controller reference, so it's above my game state. I'm going to compile and save, go back here, and I'm just going to refresh this node one more time. The reason why I wanted the player controller first is, as I drag these out, the player controller is also the owning player. So I'm just going to pass that into there. Actually, while this will work, I'm going to try something else first. I am going to do a reference, and I'm going to delete that reroute. I'm going to plug in owning player. I'm going to plug in my, oh no, so this is the controller, sorry, yeah. I'm going to plug in my control, I'm going to leave that reroute node in. I'm not going to try anything. So now the owning player and the controller are both going back to that self because we are in our player controller. I'm going to take my game state reference and I'm going to hook it up to this last little bit here. Just going to make it a little bit prettier. Compile and save, and I'm going to hit play. If I hit up, you notice the clock will go faster. If I hit up again, it's even faster. If I hit pause, it stops. If I hit decrease, it will start at the 5 value again, because that's how we set it up in that if statement. If I hit down, it's going to slow down. Now we're back at the normal game speed. Now we're just a little bit slower than that. Now we're at the slowest speed we can have before we pause. And now we're paused. Now when I say pause, it just means our clock has stopped. As you can tell, our event tick is still working. Which means that if we have anything in the game that is running that will run in relation to this time, we need to make sure that it also pauses. But we'll worry about that down the road, because we have nothing yet here that relies upon this time. And we will, though. Construction, NPC movements will rely upon this. So let's close that out. Let's save it. And we're done with this section pretty much. So what we can do now is we can just clean things up. The first thing I want to do is I want to go to my game state, oddly enough. I clicked the right one. I'm going to my clock. And, you know, I'm going to leave this in here just in case I need this for later. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to unhook that, and I'm going to delete it. We don't need this anymore. Delete that as well. Compile and save. And that's my clock, so let's do my calendar as well. Sorry, opened the wrong thing. Going to highlight that reroute node all the way through that print string, and I'm going to delete. Compile, save. If I hit play, we don't have that time showing up in the corner anymore, and everything still works. You notice the pause on pause button doesn't do anything here. The reason for that is a slight mistake in our design in the code. If you go back to the HUD for a second, it's actually in this bit here. And what we want to do is we want to set an is paused in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to unhook this node for a second, and I'm going to copy, or sorry, I'm not going to copy, I'm going to just type in branch. I don't know why I thought I was going to copy the is paused. I'm just going to move this a little bit over so it's a little bit neater. And what I want is both of these are going to eventually plug into the set game speed. But I want to know, is my current speed setting equal to 1? So I'm going to open up game speed, take out my speed setting, and I'm going to type in equal. We want it equal to 1 for this part. It's the only value we care about. If it's equal to 1, what we want to do is, first, before we get into is it equal to 1, let's just move that over there. Drag that out a bit. We are going to just grab off the false and plug it into that reroute just to save ourselves some time. Move that there. So what happens is if it is not equal to 1, it just does the normal thing. Put another reroute in because we have a little bit more to add. Off this true, however, so if it is equal to 1, what we want to do is we want to recreate a little bit of the functionality that we get inside of our pause button. So I'm just going to grab my set current speed setting. I'm just going to plug it in here. I'm going to put a reroute into this so it's just a little bit nicer looking. Plug into there. Another reroute into here. And let's just drag this out. Sorry, don't want to drag that out. Let's drag that out just a tiny bit so we have a little bit more room to play with. Again, another reroute into this. And what I'm going to do off of here is I'm going to set is pause. So I'm going to copy in my set is pause. I'm going to set it to true. And I'm just going to plug it into that node. Oh, sorry, that reroute there. So what should happen is if it's at 1, it gets its current speed of 1. And it will set it to pause. And then it will update. So if we hit compile, save, and play, and we decrease. Oh, that didn't seem to work. Well, you know what? Honestly, you don't need this bit. It created more issues, actually. It had to go twice, which I don't know why that's the case. And to be frank, I am not too bothered by it not working the way I intended it for it to, because it still has functionality. Let's just clean this back up a bit. Sorry about that. Plug that in down there. I can go back into there. Well, that was an experiment that I hadn't thought about trying before. I literally just thought about that while I was recording it. As I said earlier, we're pretty much done with the section. I'm just cleaning it up and commenting things out and adding little bits of functionality. If you want to do something regarding what I just tried to do, go for it. I don't have it in any of my other projects. It was just literally something I thought about whilst doing this recording. So I'm going to hit comment this and name it pause game time. Going to comment this as 24 versus 12 hour clock. And I'm going to highlight this section, and this will be increase game speed. Just going to drag that over there for a second. And this will be decrease game speed. There we go. So it's a little bit neater looking. Compile, save. I can close this out, and I believe for the length of this tutorial series, we will not return to this HUD. At least I have no intention to, unless we add in that functionality that I was thinking about here. I would have to actually explore that before doing it on the video. So we can close that out. We are done with this enum. And let's see, anything in our game state that we need to comment out? Nope. I mean, you can add comments in here if you want to add comments about what this is doing. Don't need to comment that out. Don't need to comment that out. You could comment these out, but we'll return to the game state a few times, so I don't feel like commenting them out quite yet. Actually, no, I'm going to. I'm going to, comment out this section as set default game speed. Or sorry, not game speed. Set default game clock and calendar. And this bit down here, I'm going to comment it out, is my set default game speed. I typically on my ticks just comment it as tick, but for this tutorial, what I'll do for reference is comment it. Actually, I'm not going to comment all of that out. I'm going to comment just this bit as update game clock and calendar. Drag it out a tiny bit. And then this one I'm going to comment out as update game speed. Compile and save all that, close it out. And don't need to comment this out, it's already in our widget, we know what it's doing. And we've added nothing else in here except for that update to our HUD. And because we are not done with this, we will be adding more HUDs and have more options regarding what should be visible, what should not be visible I'm not going to comment this out. I'm simply going to close it out. And I'm going to I'm going to return to the main window and make sure everything else is in the correct order, so that nothing is sitting outside of where it should be. So I have my two new enums. My game setting and game state are in the right place. My library has the function from the first half of for the first section. My interface from this current section. My lighting from this current section is there. Everything looks like it's in the right place. So that said, congratulations on completing the second section of this RTS tutorial series. As always, your comments and feedback is very much appreciated. I'm getting a lot of it via private messages on Twitter and Reddit. I would love to see a little bit more in the comments here, so that if people have disagreeing opinions or have particular things they want to see, that it's, open and shared here. You can look back a couple of weeks ago when we set up part of this, and people were asking for a cover system. It's lovely to see different people asking for the same thing in one place. Makes it easier for me to work out what you guys really want. And as always, likes are always appreciated. Lets me know I'm bringing you content that you appreciate and value, and it helps boost the ratings of this channel, so this tutorial gets out there a bit more. So when we come back to this, I'm going to upload a summary video of what we did in this section, probably Wednesday of the week this video goes up, which actually is next week. I'm a little bit behind on my recording schedule. So this video should go up on Monday, and the summary should go up on Wednesday. The video that I'll release either on Thursday or Friday, depending on my weekend schedule, will cover introduce setting up our resources, and the first lesson for setting up our resource system. That said, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you in the next lesson.